One of the most visceral and popular cartoons was of a group walking around a tree, following their own footsteps, with the punchline, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." Pogo, what if this is the great truth of our era? What if this was the truth of the ages? What if the enemy was us? If not specifically us as a species, then us as a supposedly rational species? What if the reality is that we are insane and the world is tantamount to an asylum for the mentally incompetent? How could we even know this, let alone solve the problem of us? How does the mentally incompetent diagnose and cure their affliction? One of the greatest problems of the insane is that we think the problem lays outside of themselves. This is how we think of the world. In popular culture, the world is a flawed system badly in need of a remaking. But what if the system works perfectly as it was intended to work, though designed by madmen? What if the entire purpose of this machine, we call human development, was to destroy us all? I cannot be fixed because it is perfect in its design and unrelenting in its execution. The only recourse we would have is to escape this system and become what amounts to a new race of beings living a new life. However, would this not suggest that the problem is this system and that we are sane? Because if the system is just a reflection of our madness, we could not see the insanity of the system without understanding its roots in our own minds. The problems of this world are due to madness. Homo sapiens suffer from a form of insanity I have labeled apriosis. But as said, if it is not the world that is the problem but the madness of the apriotic, do you think the mad will accept any solution offered? Because madness will convince the apriotic that whatever madness there is elsewhere, e.g. out in the world. How can we convince the mad that the problem is in the way they think, believe, and reason? They already assume everything said to them is a potential lie told to harm them. Probably my first insight came to me in the 60s. I came to the conclusion that, despite claims to the contrary, humans were not rational. As a youth, I could not understand why humans considered themselves the rational species. I am unsure if this is as popular an expression as it used to be. But I never thought the entire race was mad. People may not think in a rational way, but it was surely only because the truth had not been revealed to them. Only as a mature adult did I find out that the irrationality of people was hard-fought. People actually created a whole host of tricks and devices to protect their madness from reality. People refused to recognize the truth. It was only in my maturity that I finally concluded that madness was the only possible explanation for why things are as they are, and indeed, for why things continue to get worse despite the technical advances. You see, mad people can think rationally outside of their affliction. Mad people are not triggered by technology the way they are when faced with eternity. It is not that the idea of eternity triggers a negative reaction. It is that to embrace it prohibits other options. To seek eternity forces rationality upon the believer. This might appear nonsense to the apriotic, but think of a gambler or someone caught up in multi-level marketing, MLM, and so many other scams. No rational person gambles, and no rational person think they can win by gambling. Even if they had the narcissism to assume they could learn the skills to beat other gamblers at their own game, such as in poker. A truly rational person would not wish to win, and so gambling would not hold any power over them. Nor would crime, which is just another form of gambling. However, the gambling bug does not end there. We find gamblers in business and politics. In fact, one of the signs of apriosis is the urge to gamble. Behind the urge is the certainty the gambler can and indeed ought to beat the odds. Gamblers have a sense they are entitled to win and cannot comprehend why they would lose. If they give up gambling, they foreclose on their destiny. Apriorism is a logical philosophy or a belief in eternity. A priorian theology is the philosophy of eternity, which requires rationality. We do not compromise when it comes to eternity. This means our focus is on perfection, not blind chance or the fates. The truth is a tautology. God exists is the ultimate tautology, as existence is God, and cannot be anything other than God, and God cannot be anything other than existence. God is the highest and most perfect conception possible, which is the truth. This means the truth is eternal, as there is no means to defeat it. There is nothing in perfection to destroy or pollute it. The kicker is, if you do not seek eternity, you do not seek truth or God, and you are effectively existentially neutralized. There is a way out of this dilemma if you accept the way you think now is not natural to humanity. We were designed to be perfect, We were not designed to be aporiotic nor to adopt or adapt to a mortal mind frame. Aporiosis is a spiritual sickness. We are born in the flesh, and we all mature in the flesh. This does not make us adults, nor in truth, fully human. We need to be born in the Spirit, but even so, not all those who are born in the Spirit mature spiritually. The child is a dependent. We do not expect the child to be responsible, nor to be accountable. The life of the child is spent living in the now. The life of the spiritually immature likewise is lived in the now. However, unlike the child, the physical adult who is spiritually immature has the abilities of a physical adult. The spiritually immature are no more responsible or accountable than they were when physically they were children. Whereas the adult understands that if you wish to have food, one needs to find seeds, prepare the ground, plant, care for the plants, reap them, and process the harvest. The spiritually immature person just wants to eat when hungry, whatever there is to eat, and whatever he has a desire to eat. In the mind of the spiritually immature, the aporiotic, it is someone else's problem to find the food wanted. The aporiotic has no more sense of being accountable for the food they eat or how they get it than the child. Like any child, the aporiotic is wary of punishment and learns avoidance behaviors, including lying, over-talking, and violent tantrums. Because they never learn to be adults, they tend to carry on with the behaviors they learned as a child. This is not to say all aporiotics are violent or even criminal. Just as there are good children, there are aporiotics who fit into society. However, these good aporiotics tend to be rule followers or legalists. They might even manifest as grammar Nazis. The key feature designating someone as an aporiotic is the same feature which designates someone as a child. Even though there is a legal definition of a minor, a child is generally someone who is dependent on their caregiver. This is often true irrespective of the child's age. If the child remains in the family home dependent on the financial assistance of their parents, they are usually treated as a child. It is only when the child has their own income and a home of their own that they begin to be treated as an adult in their own right. So it is with the spiritually immature. So long as they remain dependents, they are treated as a domesticated creature and in need of supervision and oversight. This line between the gainfully employed and the dependent can be clearly delineated between the parasite and apriorian. Apriorian is a term coined to describe someone not a parasite and who makes no claims on the production of others. Nor does an apriorian permit claims against what he or she created. This is the only viable definition of equality. Narrowing down the definition of the spiritually ill to whether they pay their own way or not may seem strange, but what greater source of division and friction is there? However, we need not leave things there. The division goes much deeper. The argument was made above that we all mature physically, but we do not all mature spiritually. But we are not tomatoes in a gardening, some ripening early and others late, and some not ripening at all. We need to understand these are two groups, and they are not compatible, and the differences between them are not reconcilable. This ought to be obvious. The host and the parasite cannot ever see eye to eye or have anything in common. The problem for the parasite is that he or she is a dependent, but there is no one who has an obligation to sustain them. Not many people subject themselves to the predation of a parasite willingly. Parasites need power. Parasites need some way to extort resources from the producer. The first parasites were Adam and Eve, but the first formal one was Nimrod. Nimrod created the first empire. He innovated the state as a way to systematically exploit a subject population. Parasites wish to live free, but one-on-one a parasite would have difficulty gaining enough resources to make the oppression profitable. The host would have to be a slave to make the parasitic activity profitable for the parasite. For a single individual to exploit several persons requires more than the power of a single person. This is why we have the state and what amounts to organized crime. But the specifics generate different forms of the same phenomenon, which is a highly stratified system exploiting the layers below. The king exploits the bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy exploits the nobles and the wealthy, and they exploit the businesses, and the businesses exploit labor, and labor exploits the weaker among them. Parasitism is MLM, gangs, professional associations, administrative hierarchies, and any organization that has a leisure class at the peak and the laboring poor at the base. The world can do without the wealthy, it cannot do without its workers, the people who produce the goods and the services. The wealthy could not exist without parasitism. Parasitism could not exist without organization predicated on the law of the jungle. The problem of the nation is parasites. Parasites eat away at the fabric of the nation, which is faith. Parasites destroy the trust that composes the foundation of the nation. The nation to survive must remove all parasites, whether locals or aliens. It is the parasites who want more parasites in, to overpower the citizen. Citizens are the ones who produce the nation. Subjects are people who are parasitic dependents of the nation. Citizens are workers and innovators who build civilizations. A nation is a particular manifestation of a civilization. Only citizens ought to have a voice in the nation because it is the citizen that builds the civilization. Citizens ought to control the conditions of citizenship. A meritocracy has no parasites. Someone who has merit is not parasitic. A priori meritocracies eliminate parasites of all kinds. Parasites are the destroyers of civilizations. An a priori meritocracy can be built starting with 3 persons and a unit of account. The trick is to block parasites from taking advantage of a good person's willingness to trust others. Good people have moral boundaries. Parasites do not have them working from a code based on the law of the jungle. In the mind of a parasite, might makes right, and the end justifies the means. It matters not what one does, if the end is a victory. But this makes one blind to anything which does not support your narrative. People tend to seek justification for doing what they want or which events that will legitimize what they already believe. I worked with one man who hated Tony, who was generally quiet until he got drunk in the afternoon and began to talk. Benny would go on and on about the guys talking. But the 3 Spanish guys that talked very animated all day, nonstop, never bothered him. We find this same tactical blindness with politics and religions. People twist everything they see and hear to fit their narrative. Black people are well known for seeing everything in terms of skin color. Even guilt and innocence is predicated on what your genetics are. This is what makes parasites the danger they are. Parasitism is justified by its existence. If you and your group can exploit another person or group, it is justified by its success. Therefore, the parasite is condemned to keep trying to justify his or her parasitic activity by doing whatever it takes to make it succeed. This is not sustainable. It does not reward merit and indeed penalizes it. This is the definition of insanity. It is insane to destroy or harm or limit merit in any way. Merit provides us with a path to eternity. That which has merit adds value. It replenishes the earth and gives us a future. Citizens have rights given to them by their work. We own what we create, and we have absolute rights to what we produce. No one can justify their claim to anything someone else created. If we do not have inalienable rights to what we create, we have no rights. This right of dominion over what we produce is the most fundamental right of all. But parasitism poses a direct threat to this right and to the rights of a citizen to what he and she created. Being part of this threat or permitting it has no justification and leads to nothing but disaster. Parasitism is the threat that must be eliminated.